aborting more than 1 of every 4 pregnancies, creating human clones, eliminating our elderly with euthanasia. Is this how we should deal with human life? Find out how you can make a difference in changing our culture in this edition of Life Matters. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters, your program on the right to life, on the culture that has originated from that idea. The idea that every human being is unique and has a right to be alive. That idea is in our founding documents. That idea is quite significant because it says that we are created by a creator and that the creator gave us our right to be alive. It's not the government's to give. The government didn't create us. The government has an obligation to protect our inalienable rights, and the first of which is that right to be alive. This is an incredibly significant idea, and from that idea has emanated a culture. That's right, and that culture is under serious and direct attack right now. If you don't understand that, if you don't understand that the idea that you are a unique human being and that human beings themselves are significant, then you're missing out on the very premise of Western civilization. That's right, Western civilization is currently under attack as we listen now. It's been under attack for a while, but people don't recognize it. They don't recognize the need to protect it, and specifically to protect the lives of those that cannot protect themselves. You see, in every society, there's been a recognition that those that are vulnerable and innocent should be protected. That's why we have policemen, to protect those that can't protect themselves from miscreants, from those that would harm or kill them. And so the government actually has been established to give us these protections. That's a foundational premise for any just society that's under attack. The idea that human beings themselves are worthy of protection. There's a culture war right now that actually is saying that human beings aren't that significant, that human beings are merely just animals, and many of them get in the way, that there's overpopulation, that people themselves, they're a problem. We have a culture that's being attacked, and if you don't understand the nature of that attack, if you aren't ready for that very real battle of ideas that is currently coming down on your society, you're going to succumb. So our goal in Life Matters is to prepare you for this battle, is to get you ready to think things through. You know, of course, that in 1973, the medical profession was impacted by the Roe v. Wade decision, which said that every single state in our nation had to allow abortion on demand. The laws of all 50 states were overturned. That's right. You're not going to hear about this in the major media. They're going to reword what happened in Roe v. Wade. But Roe v. Wade was a significant decision because it was meant to question the laws in Texas, the state of Texas, regarding abortion. But the decision then stripped all of the laws in every single state, even like California that had rather liberal laws. But even in California, the law said, you can get abortions. This is in 72. You can get abortions, but it has to be for those hard reasons: rape, incest, life of the mother, severe fetal deformity, the standard litany of reasons. But after 20 weeks, well, boy, that's a pretty big kid. You can't kill a kid after 20 weeks. That was the law in California. We had a very liberal law, but it still recognized that that child that far along should be protected under the law. Roe v. Wade prohibited protection for that child at any time. Roe v. Wade basically decided we will not recognize that child as a human being, and that child will not be protected. That is the significance of Roe. Do they say that on CNN, on NBC, on PBS? Of course not, because they are ideologically committed to the abortion mentality. But that has brought with it, that overturn of those laws protecting the vulnerable child in the womb, that has brought in its train resultant ideas so that now many vulnerable human beings are being killed by euthanasia in this nation. Human life has lost the intrinsic value and worth that our founders proclaimed. And because of that loss, it's getting even worse. Today's program is a follow-up to last week's program on the difficult job of being a nurse in this new culture. And if you know anyone in nursing, make sure they hear this program. Or if you know anyone going into the nursing profession, nurses are not protected with conscience clauses. That's right. Nurses do not have that protection. Many nurses are good nurses and don't want to be involved in abortion. And you know what? They can excuse themselves. They can say, I don't want to be involved. But what they don't have is protection from punishment by their employer. So sure, you can say, I don't like abortion, but right now, because it didn't pass yet, the Conscience Rights Act on the federal level was introduced in 2018, but it did not pass. So even now, an employer can say, I'm sorry, Sally, you didn't participate in that abortion, and we believe in abortion here, and you're going to have to lose your job. That nurse doesn't have protections. So we want to make sure that the Abortion Conscience Act is enacted and that nurses and others in the medical profession do have that legal protection. But until then, you need to know that this entire profession is under attack. The medical profession itself has changed greatly because since Roe v. Wade, as you know in many states, the authorization of killing other patients, other human beings can be killed. When the laws were put into effect regarding abortion, that was in the late 1800s, and at that time, the American Medical Association was part of that process of protecting them. And Dr. Horatio B. Storer actually was the founder of modern gynecology. And he saw that abortions were being done, late term even, and he said, we have to protect my second patient. He studied childbirth. He was the preeminent scholar on gynecology and on childbirth. And he himself took it upon himself to make sure that every state had laws to protect that child in the womb. Again, he called that child my second patient. So the laws protecting children were in effect up until 1973. That's what was overturned in Roe. And that significance of dismissing that child, again, that child is objectively a human baby and is really objectively vulnerable and innocent. That child at one time was the most protected. At one time, the mother's womb was the safest place for a child. Now it is the most dangerous. So we're going to talk about those good nurses. Often they're the backbone of the medical profession, the pressure they're under. And we have been talking last week with Zonya Townsend of California Nurses for Ethical Standards. And also we were talking with Nancy Valko. Again, you can find out more about Nancy if you go to nancyvalko.com. She is an expert in medical ethics, and particularly when it comes to the realm of nursing. So we're going to join when we come back Nancy Valko and Zonya Townsend talking about the incredible ethical pressures on modern nursing.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I was very excited when I heard about LifeFest Film Festival. LifeFest is the film festival dedicated to showcasing films that affirm the intrinsic worth of innocent human life and the profound significance of each life. One seemingly insignificant person can in fact change the whole world in which he or she lives. That one singular life ends up being of vital importance. I'm so glad to hear that you are cherishing that in this film festival and are committed to artfully and creatively protect the lives of those who can't possibly promote themselves.
Life Film Fest is dedicated to bring the message of life to Hollywood and to our culture. Go to lifefilmfest.com and get your tickets now. That's lifefilmfest.com.
Find out about the exciting cultural change impacting Hollywood. Go to lifefilmfest.com. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Welcome back to Life Matters. We're going to be talking to Nancy Valko. A lot of times a pro-life nurse, I know you're under this pressure, and really anyone listening is a pro-life individual. You're not going to be liked when you have to explain why and what it is you're opposing. Because to be honest, It's very unpleasant. And nevertheless, we have to do it. It was not fun for General Eisenhower to first discover the death camps. They all knew of their existence, but to see it was very unpleasant. He then forced the citizens of Dachau to walk through this camp that was near their town. They knew of its existence, but they ignored the implications. And that's just part of our job in dealing with objective reality. You know, as a pro-life individual, we're dealing with objective reality. It's not my personal. You know, Eisenhower didn't say, well, personally, I'm upset on my personal religious feelings. No, this is a violation of humanity's right. This is a violation of Western civilization's ethos and rules. And so when we are faced with circumstances, the temptation is to, well, just kind of be quiet or maybe use their language. But we have to make the distinction. This is not aid in dying. This is intentional killing. It is intentional killing. That is the language and that is the action. They don't want it phrased that way. This often, again, there's no physician involved anymore. And as Nancy has pointed out, it lands on other people's laps. They have to witness this. One of the first cases in Oregon had to do, when this was legalized in Oregon, had to do with a quadriplegic who couldn't take the medicine. And so the family had to help. And then as he was choking it down, it wasn't sure it was having an effect. So his new brother-in-law, who had just married into the family, he basically had to smother him with a pillow. Well, that wasn't part of the plan. But unfortunately, there is agency. When you talk about an assistant, no, this isn't truly suicide. Other people are giving it agency. And as Nancy said, a lot of times the doctors don't want to be that person. It creeps them out because this is such a direct violation of not just common sense, but of Western medicine, of Western civilization. You are killing a vulnerable person. And we have to be willing to point that out in the case of abortion. When partial birth abortion was on the floor of Congress and Congressman Smith was describing it, Senator Boxer was very upset and said, it's wrong. Why we need to send the pages out. They shouldn't be hearing this. Well, wait a second. Wait, of course it's unpleasant to hear because what you're doing is so grotesque. And so it is hard when we're assigned the need to say, no, I can't do this, and this is why. And so it's a challenge, but Nancy, you've done it very well, where you challenge those who are doing these evil acts. But we need to do it in a way that we make sure that we stand resolute, but that we describe why. And we don't use their language. We need to use the real language because the first victim in any war is language, is the truth. It's spun, it's distorted. But these nurses have been under great pressure and they've had to resist. So tell us about the Pro-Life Nurses Association.
One thing I wanted to mention too, if you ask your doctor, where do you stand on assisted suicide, please tell him where you stand and why. It's not enough to say, oh, he says that. I had a doctor who said, I'm not sure. And we talked about it. He goes, wow, I didn't know that. There's always a chance to open somebody's eyes somewhere along the line. But we started the National Association of Pro-Life Nurses a couple decades ago to be a place because the American Nurses Association recently approved voluntary stopping of eating and drinking so that somebody would die. And we thought about it. I found out, we weren't told about it, but somebody told me this was coming out. And we had nurses write in. They paid no attention to us and they went ahead with it. Right now, Compassion and Choices has tried to push this through with litigation. They had an elderly couple that went into a nursing home and said, okay, we're not going to eat and drink, but we want to be made comfortable. Because, of course, it's not just stopping eating and drinking, as all of us know who diet. It's miserable. You have to have a doctor. Even Compassion Choices says you must have a doctor. It's perfectly legal, but to make you more comfortable. And the nursing home said, no, we've got Medicare rules. We've got to feed people. So they took them to court. Luckily, they won, and the people went home and did themselves in at home. But they want us there. They want the approval. It's not just toleration. They want approval. They want to be told that this is a good thing. You see now with abortion, you see the heads of Planned Parenthood talking about it's a wonderful thing and it helps women and helps the other children in the family. Terrible things. And it's really a very short step from choice to no choice. I found that out in 1982 when I gave birth to a daughter who had Down syndrome. And my husband and I had actually looked into adopting a very famous case at the time where parents decided to refuse a simple but life-saving surgery so that their newborn son with Down syndrome could eat.
The baby doe situation?
That baby doe situation. We were one of the parents who wanted to do it. They rejected everybody. I was pregnant, did not know I had my own baby doe. When my daughter Karen was born, I asked about her heart, and they called in a cardiologist, and he said, it's so bad, take her home. She's going to die in 2 weeks to 2 months. And I was devastated until I thought, who is this guy? I signed myself out of the hospital, basically, and started researching in the age before computers. By the time I went in to see him the next time, I was armed. I knew all about cardiac defects and the new things that were out there. And he said, well, let me do some more tests. She's doing better than I thought. And he said, oh, she's got an 80 to 90% chance with one open heart surgery. I went, oh, thank God. And then he goes, but I'll support you either way. I said, excuse me. I said, she's not even a fetus, for God's sakes. When do her constitutional rights kick in? I jumped on him. And he goes, oh, wait, whatever you want to do. I said, this is not about whatever I want to do. I'm choosing life for my child. Well, unfortunately, she wound up a little later, a few months later, with pneumonia. And when she had been in the hospital before, I talked to everybody that touched her. Nurses, doctors, where do you stand? What do you know about Down syndrome? And I didn't want anyone taken care of. I refused one doctor for a cardiac cath because some other parents had overheard him talking about what are we trying to save all these little mongoloids for? So anyway, she was in the hospital one time for pneumonia. And I had fought so hard for her. And got a phone call. Somebody at the hospital tipped us off. My pediatrician, who I couldn't have been more clear with, I said, she's never to be DNR. Nothing is to be taken away unless I say it. She had made my daughter a do not resuscitate against my express wishes. And when there was no reason to do that. And that's when I realized choice, a bad choice automatically becomes no choice, whether we're talking abortion or assisted suicide. Even withdrawal of treatment, we have the National Health Service in Britain, and I've written about this too. Huge thing. They found out all these elderly people were being overdosed to death. And when they got big on beds, they needed some more beds. They got rid of people. They were making people DNRs and nobody even knew. This is what I mean. Bad choice becomes no choice.
Very common, and the pressures now on nursing homes throughout, I know California, because Medi-Cal will pay, I believe it's $1,500 per bed. But if there is someone who has private insurance, you can bill $10,000 a bed. So the financial pressure on these decision makers is great. If there's no one stepping up for that patient, if there's no one visiting them, I'm afraid their fate will be sealed.
One of the saddest things I have gotten phone calls from people, and other friends of mine have too. I think they killed my dad in the nursing home or in hospice or whatever. I can't get anyone to pay attention. They don't want to look into, the police don't want to look into this. And I have to explain to them, although I've gotten lawyers sometimes, it's very hard to prove. And then you've got to prove damages. Well, what damages do you have with an older person who's not working? It sounds fair, but a lot of them won't look into like a suspicious hospice death.
No. One of the things I do believe in contacting lawyers beforehand, that is critically important that you get all the advice. The reason we have Nancy on now is to let you know there is good advice you can get. Always get a second opinion. Always make sure that you're researching on behalf of your loved one. And Nancy, if you could tell us, please, how people can find out more about the Pro-Life Nurses Association.
Well, we have a Facebook page, and we also have a website at, this is one word, nursesforlife.org. And we have a lot of stuff on that. Our Facebook page, we constantly keep updating it with the latest information and things that are on there. I try to put in hints and things like from my blog or whatever about, caring for somebody who has Alzheimer's, things that I've learned over the years, simple things that can help people and even other nurses. And it's been really good. We're supporting them, and we're doing something that the ANA, the American Nurses Association, isn't doing. And actually, I was very active. I was asked to join my state association on some workplace issues. I had ideas, and I said, I want to work with you on ethics. And they said, oh, yeah, we'll get to that. Could you do this? And I did something that turned out to be very, very successful. And I found out there was a representative from the National American Nurses Association. And she came up to me and she said, you could go really far in our organization, but she had done her homework. She said, but you'd have to give up that pro-life stuff. And I said, thank you if you think I'm a good nurse, but let me tell you, it's because I'm pro-life, not despite it.
That makes all the difference. If there's any nurses out there, please have them listen to this. Any friends you know that want to go into nursing, please let them know that there is a Pro-Life Nurses Association, because it's hard to find support. Nancy, we want to have you back really soon. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Life Matters is sponsored by the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of the National Right to Life Committee. To find out more on how you can help and be involved right where you are, go to californiaprolife.org. That's californiaprolife.org. We'll tell you how you can get involved in your local community, how you can be effective if you want to be a pro-life speaker. We have training programs and open doors of opportunity for you to speak on the life issue. If you'd like to donate your car or a boat, you can do that at californiaprolife.org. Car Easy makes it easy, and you find that on our website. We get the most of any donation program. Car Easy allows us to get the most out of your car. Maybe you're not getting the trade-in value you wanted. Maybe it's just not running the way it used to. Let your car be used for life. Go to californiaprolife.org and find out what you can do to make a difference. californiaprolife.org.
Be sure to subscribe to the Life Matters podcast with Brian Johnston. Go to lifematters.life to subscribe. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, we're back on with Zonya Townsend. And Zonya, you've been a great friend of life and an advocate for life in the medical profession, particularly with California Nurses for Ethical Standards. Tell us just a little bit about CNES and what interested nurses can do.
California Nurses for Ethical Standard is an organization. It's a nonprofit organization, and we're totally into education, where we believe that people acknowledge, or once they understand that life begins at conception, that until natural death, and that is what we advocate for, and we support the conscience rights. And those are the law that God has written on our hearts, that we know the difference. And we offer educational units for nurses. We are authorized by the California BRN. And we offer continuation units. We have had several conferences at Biola University, Brian, that you have been guest speaker at, bioethics conference, and we have different topics on euthanasia and conscience rights. And so it is totally pro-life and anything related to conscience rights and protecting the precious life that God, made in his image.
Tell us the distinction, particularly I'm thinking for someone interested in the nursing profession. There is a California Nurses Association, a union of nurses, so to speak, and they should be aware of that organization and how ethically dangerous it is.
The hospital I work at, it has never been part of that organization, but now they have been very persistent, and I think it's just a matter of time before they come in. They basically, they're union, and they have the union mentality. I understand there might be some pros because they say they speak out for the rations, as far as the ratio, I should say, for the nurses versus patients, but they go beyond that. As far as the conscience with abortion or euthanasia, their philosophy is so much more liberal. People that believe in euthanasia or assisted suicide is if the patient wants to die, then just help them. And it's that type of mentality where the convictions are not the same at all.
Well, in some ways, I think their convictions are against you, in the sense I know that this California Nurses Association actively advocates with Planned Parenthood for unlimited abortion.
They do.
They don't want any kind of restraints. Late-term abortion? No, the late-term abortion is fine. Abortion for sex selection or because the child might have a disability, they're fine with that.
They are.
They want all abortions all the time, and they will not countenance any kind of limits on abortion.
Correct. They're aligned with Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, even within the Kaiser system, is not a pro-life system, to protect life. Right. So yes, they are all very aligned. And that is the difference with California Nurses for Ethical Standards. We function on the biblical standards.
And I think it's very important too for listeners to know that the self-evident truth about what a human being is, that a human being is not a mere animal, that the medical profession was founded on that premise, that there's something very significant about a human being, that you're not treating an animal. The advocates for euthanasia say, well, we're kinder to puppy dogs, that, we'll kill a sick puppy dog in the name of mercy. But that is not because of mercy. That's because we do not want to give the extra attention and money and resources to an animal that we do want to offer to a human being. So you're actually lowering your esteem for a human being when you dispatch that human being as if it were a golden retriever. The problem is that our ethical standards have changed so dramatically and so quickly that many have not recognized it, and they don't realize that often in a medical setting, the lives of those who are subjected to that care can be at risk. And you have to have advocates that recognize, wait a second, I want a second opinion. Wait a second, is this actually what's best for my loved one? Even though that person that's talking to you might be a nurse, might be a doctor, they are not necessarily there to protect the patient. They're there as a business, and they see that patient as the object of their business. And that's such an important distinction. So California Nurses for Ethical Standards is resisting that and fighting the good fight, and we're very proud of you, Zonya.
Thank you so very much. May I please give how they can contact me? You can contact me at Zonya, ZONYA, at ethicalnurses.org. Thank you so very much, Brian. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Zonya, for all you
Thank
do.
you.
God bless.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life. Wherever you are in the nation, you can find out more at National Right to Life. You can find vital pro-life information and also find the access to your state and local Right to Life affiliate. Get informed and get involved.